All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about something that honestly still baffles people today: Pablo Escobar's funeral. I mean, you've got this guy who was, without a doubt, the most wanted criminal on the planet. But on the other hand, well, what happened when he died is just not what you'd expect. Just look at that number for a second: 25,000. That's not a small crowd. That's how many people actually came out to mourn the most powerful drug lord ever. Yeah, you heard that right. Not to celebrate his death, to grieve it. And that, right there, is the core paradox we're going to try and get to the bottom of. Which leads us to the one-word question that hangs over all of this. Why? I mean, really, why would tens of thousands of people pour into the streets to cry for a man that, let's be honest, the rest of the world considered an absolute monster? Okay, so let's put ourselves there. The date is December 3rd, 1993. The place, Jardines Montesacro Cemetery in Medellin, Colombia. Now, they planned for a funeral, sure, but what actually happened was just pure, unadulterated chaos. The crowd was absolutely enormous, just completely out of control. So much so that even the police and the army, they couldn't do a thing to keep any kind of order. I mean, it was just total pandemonium. The crowd was so massive that Escobar's own family couldn't even get to the burial site. Their car was swarmed, they had to turn around, they missed their own family member's burial. A priest tried to say a few prayers, but forget it. The crush of people was so intense, he couldn't. And you had people literally fighting with the police, with the army just clawing to get a few feet closer. So how do we even begin to understand that kind of scene? Well, we have to look at the two very different sides of Pablo Escobar. Because for thousands and thousands of people there, he wasn't a criminal. No, to them, he was a hero. You see, he'd spent years building this Robin Hood image of himself. And you have to remember, in a city like Medellin, a lot of people felt completely forgotten by their own government. So he just stepped right into that gap. He gave away millions to the poor in Colombia. For people living in the slums, he built entire neighborhoods. He provided food. He gave them a sense of hope when the government gave them, well, pretty much nothing. And this wasn't some quiet, somber affair. No way. This was loud. It was a statement. People were wearing T-shirts with his picture plastered on the front. They were holding up signs that read, "Long live Pablo Escobar." They were treating him like a fallen president, a beloved leader, not a dead drug lord. But, and this is a huge but, for every single person there who saw a hero, there was someone else in Colombia who saw a terrorist. The official view, the view of the government, and, of course, his countless victims, was, as you can imagine, a completely different story. To the people in charge, to the authorities, he was a ruthless cocaine baron, period. He was the man responsible for a wave of terror and violence that nearly tore the country apart. For them, there were no gray areas. It was black and white. So it really just boils down to this, doesn't it? You've got two Pablos. On one side, he's Robin Hood, the savior of the poor, loved by his followers. And on the other side, he's the drug lord, a terrorist, a ruthless killer, wanted by basically everyone with a badge or a rival with a grudge. And it's this massive, unbridgeable gap between those two identities that explains everything about his death. You have to get that these two realities existed side by side to understand any of this. So how did they finally get him? I mean, this guy had been on the run for 16 long months after breaking out of his own custom-built prison. Everybody was after him: the government, the Americans, rival cartels. And in the end, after all that, the whole massive manhunt came down to one single fatal mistake. So here's what happened. On December 2nd, 1993, the day right before that wild funeral, Escobar did something he knew was risky. He called his son. Maybe he was getting sentimental, maybe he just knew the end was close. Whatever the reason, that phone call was all they needed. The authorities traced it, pinpointed his location to a middle-class neighborhood in Medellin, and after a short, intense shootout on the rooftops, it was over. The most wanted man in the world was dead. And the reaction from the guys who got him? It was pure joy. The transmission that crackled over the police radios was, "Viva Colombia, we just killed Pablo Escobar." For them, it was this huge moment of national victory. They had won this long, bloody war. You just can't get a more stark contrast to the absolute grief that was about to pour into the streets, can you? So that brings us back to the big question, right? What is this guy's legacy? Is he a folk hero or is he a horror story? And the crazy thing is, for Colombia, the answer is he's both. he's still both. And amidst all this public drama, it's easy to forget there was a private family tragedy, too. Escobar's son talked about it later. He described the terrible pain of losing his father, but then he said that pain was made even worse by the insane chaos at the funeral. It kind of brings you back down to earth, a reminder that there are real people behind these huge historic headlines. And that split, it's not ancient history. It's still happening today. There are Colombians who genuinely admire him, who see him as a champion for the little guy, and there are others who despise him, who see him as a monster who ruined their country. A lot of people see him as this black story for Colombia, kind of like how Germany feels about Hitler, a dark stain they can't quite wash away. I mean, even now, if you're from Colombia, just having that name on your passport can mean extra questions and searches at airports. His legacy is anything but dead. So let's circle all the way back to where we started. Why did 25,000 people show up to mourn Pablo Escobar? It's because to them, he simply wasn't the monster the rest of us saw on the news. He was their guy, their provider, their protector, their hero. The answer is complicated because the man himself was a walking, breathing contradiction. He was Robin Hood and he was a monster, all wrapped up in one. And the one you saw really just depended on which side of his story you were living.